Good morning. Thank you all so much for joining me this morning. As already mentioned, my name is Leah Rankin. I am the Chief Product Officer at SiteMinder. And today I have the pleasure of coming and talking to you about a phenomenon that I think most people in this room know all too well. It's probably something that some of us get pretty motivated by. Others may actually be losing sleep because of it. But ultimately, it's something we all undoubtedly feel. And that is the accelerating pace of change. Our world, and by the extension, the world of hotels, is evolving faster than ever before. And as that pace increases, it's important that we not only understand and recognise those changes in the environment, but also understand what that means for our industry. And so that's what I'm here to share with you today. We know that hotels are becoming increasingly intertwined with the external environment they operate within. This means that they have to become more chameleon-like or as dynamic as the world around them. But rather than viewing that as overwhelming, which of course it can be, we can also see it as an invitation to adapt. We've identified through our research that there are 5 key dynamic forces that are really reshaping how hotels operate today. Changing travel patterns, the rise of events, shifting workforce dynamics, intensifying competition, and of course, the evolving role of technology. So in the first part of my presentation, I'm going to dive a bit deeper into these 5 topics to really understand how they do change the world we live in today. And to conclude, I'll summarise how technology providers like ourselves really need to keep up with this fast change to make sure that we're enabling success for hotels. So let's jump in. Firstly, changing travel patterns. So interesting stats here. Look, in recent years, we've witnessed, of course, the rise of international movement around the world. At 1.4 billion, arrivals from international guests were roughly on par in 2019 levels last year. However, the stat that's most impactful is that that's expected to increase by 70 million in 2025. So international travel is hitting a peak and going into uncharted territory. In Germany, we know through SiteMinder properties that about 2/3 of check-ins are domestic. However, international travel is also growing in this region. Countrywide, in the first half of 2024, 2.5 million more international guests checked in during the same period than 2023. And I believe Switzerland, the US and the Netherlands were leading the way. But between June and August, so for that summer period, we also saw tourism for international travel grow by 8%. The other thing we're seeing is a shift in how guests are booking. And that booking window is also increasing. So in SiteMinder's recently released Hotel Booking Trends report, we documented that here in Germany, the hotel booking window is expanding. And we see here that from 2019, it went from 19 days to up to 33 days in the last year. This means that hotels need to not only understand where their guests are coming from, but they also need to understand what the dynamics and the changes of guest booking behaviours also mean for their hotel. The second dynamic force that I'd like to talk through today is the rise of events and how they are really playing a role in revenue generation. So our collective fascination of events is, of course, nothing new, but it is accelerating. And it's expected to almost double in size by 2032. SiteMinder's Changing Traveller report in 2025 found that 2 in 3 travellers are more likely to travel for an event than they were the same time in last year. And we've actually seen this growing desire evident in the European Championships just here, where UEFA reported more than 50 million ticket requests for the just 2.7 million tickets that were available for sale. 44% of those ticket holders travelled from abroad, and it brought in a massive 7 billion euros in revenue for the German economy. Obviously, hotels also benefited, with SiteMinder's stats reporting an 11% increase across all of Germany in room revenue and 18% here in Berlin. This is a pattern that we're seeing happen across the entire globe, as hotels are really capitalising on those demand spikes from events. You can see here that the recent US Open of tennis caused a 16% spike in hotel room revenue compared to the rest of the New York summer. The number of shows that Madonna did in Mexico City created a jump of 27%, and that Oktoberfest proved to be a very profitable period for Munich hotels with a massive 60% increase. But looking at the speed at which these properties are reacting to newly announced events is also something that will really highlight that there is an opportunity that also can be missed. We know that 58%, almost 60%, will book their hotel almost immediately, or at least within the week after booking events, which means that staying on top of high-impact, time-sensitive events is now critical. It's non-negotiable for hotels. I'll dig a little deeper into this using some data that we have with Coldplay's recently announced Australian shows. So the tickets in this instance went on sale on November the 20th. By the end of November 21, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of room revenue was booked, demanding a spike of over 600%. Yet prices were largely the same. And it wasn't until toward the end of the month, so by November 29, that a lot of hotels had cottoned on and had actually increased their room rates for that particular period. And then, and that resulted in a spike of 24%. So we can see here that there is a lot of revenue that can be left on the table if you're unable to respond real time to these events as and when they are announced. So we've looked at changing travel patterns. We've also looked at the expanding opportunity the events industry can create. So let's now look at some of the factors within our own workforce and how that's impacting our industry's people. As you can see here, we've identified that there's a growing gap between the demand for revenue management and the talent pool that is able to deliver on its potential. This is a phenomenon that we've seen increase, particularly since COVID. So, of course, Germany is home to exceptional revenue managers, but just the same as across the globe, that gap is really being felt as the demand for revenue management is being increasingly outstripping the supply. As recently said by a group director of sales and revenue distribution, being a revenue manager now is about improving your position and changing the future. It's about analysing the data, forming the insights, and then taking action. This, to me, really underscores how revenue management is now central to every accommodation business. It's also a timely reminder that as the broader role and demand for revenue management grows, it's not just established businesses that have sophisticated revenue management capability that needs to be able to adapt, but also those independent properties around the world without them. Which brings me to the fourth evolving force that hoteliers are facing, and that's intensifying competition. Germany saw the addition of 20,000 branded hotel rooms over the past 12 months, with 26,000 in the pipeline across the country, and over 113,000 across Europe already under construction. This really heightens the competition being felt by local hotels. Here in Berlin, the recently opened Radisson Collection Hotel, soon to be opened Preisatel and Estral Tower, will add over 1,200 rooms alone, which is a pretty astonishing number. The bottom line here is that there is more choice than ever before for global travellers, and it's vital for hotels to be able to benchmark not just how they're performing against their competitors, but against the broader market to ensure that there's no money being left on the table. We know that German properties, they're already adjusting their prices. We can see here that last June, on average, the 48 euros more expensive than January when hotels were the quietest. And here we can see that businesses were earning an average of 45 euros more on Fridays than Sundays last year. But as the market grows more competitive, Regent hotels really need to double down on their dynamic revenue management in the coming years to make sure that they have continued success. Finally, as technology provider like ourselves, we are constantly witnessing how tech is both being built and consumed. In this example, we see that globally, the trend in mobile share is increasing, taking more from web traffic and desktop, heightening the need for hotel tech to build software optimized for mobile, particularly as the workforce becomes more distributed. And this trend's accelerating. When I did a presentation back in Australia, December's data showed that mobile devices accounted for under 60%, whilst desktop was 38%. And already by December of 2024, that updated to 63% and 35% respectively. Not only that, but we're seeing the recommendation culture explode. Overwhelmed by choice, consumers are increasingly looking to suppliers and businesses to know what's best for them. I don't know how many of you are aware, but in Netflix, over 80% of what we consume, 80% of what we watch on Netflix actually comes through personalised recommendations. And this is a quickly growing culture that we need to adapt to and really make the most of to ensure that we are responding to how consumers are adapting. Finally, for years we've witnessed that hotel tech is often led to fragmentation rather than cohesion. Systems don't always speak to one another, leading to duplicated data, inefficiencies, complicated rate adjustments, and misaligned reporting. So now we have understanding of what the key dynamic forces are at play. We must collectively ask ourselves, what do the world's hotels currently need to succeed? And how can we ensure that businesses can stay ahead? Steve Jobs said it well when he said, "Get closer than ever to your customers." So close, in fact, that you need to tell them what they need to know well before they realize it themselves. This is something we know all too well, and after connecting with a wide range of our own customers around the world, it became increasingly clear to us that we can no longer afford to see market intelligence, revenue optimization, and distribution in isolation from one another. Too much time and revenue is being lost when we do. To match the pace of today's world, it's vital that these three elements come together so that we can give hotels the ability to firstly know what's happening in their market through intelligence. Secondly, to understand the actions that they could take to optimize their own revenue. And thirdly, be able to distribute those actions real-time, seamlessly in one platform. This is at the core of the SiteMinder vision and our smart platform. And I'd like to take a moment to bring this to life in a real-world example. So, if you'd like to join me, we're going to head outside into the streets of Berlin and walk through how this can come to life. Here you are, a local hotelier, coffee in hand, on your commute to work, when you receive a real-time push notification telling you about an upcoming event that's taking place close to your hotel. You open the notification and quickly gain key insights about the event, including the level of demand, how your room sales are tracking to the same time last year, and how your competitors are pricing. The good news is, you got wind of an event like this happening, so you had already put on a temporary stop sell, which you want to quickly remove. Now with the event confirmed, you can implement the impactful pricing strategies before your competition does. Feeling good about your decisions, you go back to your commute, but the event has sparked your interest. When reaching your desktop, you check how your hotel is tracking compared to previous years of the concert weekend, traditionally a slow season, and positively, you see that year on year your pacing is ahead. However, your future availability report confirms your suspicions that you are indeed tracking behind the rest of the market. You assess that market, and you can also see that you're missing out on some source markets with some of the emerging markets in China and South Korea. You make a note to look into that. But for now, you sit down with your team and talk about the upcoming event. This is an insight into SiteMinder's vision for a new era in hotel revenue management. A vision that this week has come to life for German hotels and select Northern Hemisphere countries with the release of our latest innovation, which you actually just saw in action. Our world, and by extension the hotel landscape, is transforming at an accelerating rate. We know that after looking deeply into these changes, that we know that we need to become as dynamic as the world around us, to gain visibility where previously there was none, and respond to an evolving world. This is the challenge of our era, a challenge that I invite each and every one of you to accept. Thank you for listening.